break. But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So today, I wanted to go through a fun little exercise with you guys. And this is something that we'll talk about tomorrow night on the show, live, command post. Remember, we're moving it from Thursday to Wednesday this week in lieu of the holiday weekend and, you know, things that will be transpiring this weekend with a lot of you. Some of you are traveling, things of that nature. So I'm going to move it up a day and get it out of the way. And this is one of the topics that we will discuss on the show. And this is a big year for a lot of players. We've talked about the impact of this offseason overall on the organization. Daniel Snyder selling the organization trumps everything. And that is the biggest reason why this is the biggest offseason in franchise history. But a lot of things have changed this offseason. A lot of staff changes, new offensive coordinator. We got a new starting quarterback. Again, you know, a lot of things have changed this offseason. And, you know, something that's going to be big that I think a lot of us will be paying attention to are all the guys that are going into their final year of their deal. So a lot of guys are on contract years, meaning they need the ball out to get to the bag. All right. So with that in mind, I've compiled a list of guys that I feel like have a chance to ball out and get paid here in Washington. Now, you could conceivably ball out. One of these guys could ball out and there's just not enough money for all of them and they get their bag somewhere else. But that's not what I want to know. What I want to know from you is which one of these, and look, there doesn't have to be just one answer. You can name multiple guys that I'm about to show you. You can name multiple players. You could say all of them. You could say 5 of them. You could say 3 of them, only 2 of them. Or there's just one guy that you see that is going to get paid here. But nonetheless, I'm going to give you a list of 10 players that I've compiled that have a chance to ball out in the final year of their current deal, get a brand new contract here in Washington, and remain a Commander for the next 3-4 years or more. With that said, let's take a look at the list that I've compiled. So this is a list of a lot of young guys for the most part. And I omitted some guys that are also in contract years. Okay. F.A. Obata's on a 1-year deal. Tyler Larson's on a 1-year deal. Those guys aren't getting long-term deals to stay here. If Ron and company are back again next year, which we don't know if they're going to be back or not, those guys will have a chance to be back, but in a 1-year, 2 at max capacity. Like those guys are probably on a 1-year contract basis from here on out in Washington, as long as Ron and company are here and they see fit that those guys can be back. But we're talking about younger players. Most of the guys on this list in front of you, they're on the final year of their rookie deals. Now, that exception is Curtis Samuel and Kendall Fuller, each of them on the last year of their second NFL contracts. However, both of them are still within the range that they could be extended and brought back next year. Fuller's 27 years old. Samuel just turned 26. So by the time you're looking to re-up with him, he'll be right in that sweet spot at 27 years old, going into the prime of his career. And meanwhile, Kendall Fuller is at probably the apex of his career, probably another year or 2 of that left before he starts to hit the decline. But you could re-up and bring him back on a 2-year deal next year, if you want to keep him in Washington, or a 3-year deal with an exit ramp after the first or second year, whatever the case may be. Let's go through this list. And I will say this, I will throw out this caveat as we're talking about this. Obviously, this list can be altered very quickly. The first way is they could reach a deal with this guy before the start of this season, and this guy could be removed from this list altogether, i.e. Cam Curl, right? The likelihood is they're not going to extend anyone at this point. Everybody that was going to get bread has already gotten it by now, okay? I see everyone having to go out and earn their contract from this list. And so I don't see anybody getting a deal in, say, July, right? No one's under the franchise tag currently with this football team. Daron Payne was the guy that they designated. They got that deal done already. So I don't see any name on this list being signed up for a new deal before the start of this upcoming season. The other thing is, a guy on this list or two, and I think there are a name or two or three on this list that may not even make the team altogether. They can't be here and ball out for a contract if they're not even on the active roster come week one. So that's another thing to consider. But we got plenty of time before we get to all of that stuff. Let's talk about the here and now. Who are the guys that you think have a chance to ball out this year, put up big time numbers that forces Washington to consider bringing them back next season and ultimately make that move? So here are the names. Antonio Gibson. Here's a guy they drafted back in 2020, third round pick. Really high hopes for him after, seeing what he was able to do at Memphis. They were making the switch from him as a receiver to a running back. And I think the initial results were very encouraging. And we were all excited about what he could be. We thought he would be even bigger as a pass catcher to this point of his career. That hasn't materialized. Then the fumbles started to happen. They became a problem more so in 2021. The beginning of 2022 did not start off well for him in the preseason. He fumbled again. They benched him in favor of their third round pick, Ryan Robinson. But we thought that would lead to a much bigger role for him as a pass catcher and a kind of Swiss Army knife return man, catching it out of the backfield. And it looked like that was going to be the case week one against Jacksonville, where he catches the corner route, has a touchdown grab against Green Bay. We were thinking that maybe this is the start of him. No, it wasn't. It still didn't touch it enough, didn't catch it enough out of the backfield. And so now you're getting Eric Bieniemy in here, and you're hoping that this is the year that he finally breaks out, finally shows all of the versatility that they fell in love with when they spent the third round pick on him out of Memphis. Is this the year that Antonio Gibson puts it all together and shows that he belongs in Washington past the 2023 season? We'll see. What says you? Cam Curl. This is a guy that a lot of you felt like should have been re-signed already. A lot of you had been harping on him getting his deal right along with Daron Payne this offseason. I don't think that's going to take place. I, myself, feel like they've done the right thing here, forcing him to go out and ball. Now, turnovers aren't everything, all right? But, and look, he may ultimately force no turnovers again this year, but continue to be the Swiss Army knife, constant professional, guy that does a little bit of everything, always where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there type of player. And there's a place in the league for that guy, and there's a slot where that guy fits in terms of a pay scale. Wherever that is and whatever Cam Curl believes he's worth, he's got a chance to prove to them he's worth XYZ. His dad was talking about this amount of money, that amount of money. And his dad was just having some fun with the situation, throwing out these, numbers. A lot of people got up in arms about it. At the end of the day, his play is going to determine how much he's worth. You go out, you force 4 or 5 turnovers this year. You take that back to the team and say, hey, I can force turnovers. You already know what type of a player I am. When I'm on the field, I make a difference. Now I'm actually producing turnovers. What do you have to say now? If he goes out and makes the Pro Bowl this year, Cam Curl is going to make himself a ton of money. Will it be here in Washington? If he doesn't, and he doesn't produce any turnovers, Washington will say, hey, we love you. We want you here. But ... And then that discussion, begins, and we see where it ends. So what about Cam Curl? Is this the breakout year for him? Does he prove once and for all that he belongs here in Washington and earns himself a big fat contract to stay here with the Commanders? What says you? How about Chase Young? We've talked about this. It's well documented. We know he's probably the most high profile player going into the final year of his deal. They did not pick up his 5th-year option, rather opting to decline that. And so it forces Young to have to go out and ball this year. And it's kind of a tough situation for him because while he's fully healthy, this is his first real season back from that injury. He came back at the tail end of last year, tested the knee out. Everything went well there, but this is the first real season back from that injury, and he's going to have to let it all hang out. Is he able to do that in a manner that forces Washington to either slap the franchise tag on him or give him a long-term deal? That remains to be seen, but he's the biggest name clearly on this list after being the number 2 overall pick back in the 2020 NFL Draft. Montez Sweat. This is a guy that I think of all the players on this list, if I were the one having to make a decision, he'd be the guy that I'd say is probably due for the breakout year. He seems to be on the cusp of having that 12 and a half, 13 sack season, 3-4 forced fumbles, a bunch of batted balls and just impact plays week after week after week. He seems like he's ready to ascend into that Daron Payne stratosphere. That Daron Payne was Montez Sweat this time last year, right? Looking for a deal, final year of his rookie contract, picked up the 5th-year option, weren't sure about him, needed him to prove that he was worth the money, and then he went out and did it. I feel like Sweat is next up in line to do the exact same thing. We'll see if he's ready to do it. He has not had double-digit sacks in his career to this point. Now this is the year where he's supposed to show improve. This is the year. Year 5 is the year that if you're going to be that guy, if you're going to turn that corner, this is the year you do it. And I'm looking forward to seeing if Montez Sweat can cash in and get to the bag with a big-time season or not. What says you? Leave it in the comment section. Curtis Samuel, we talked about him briefly at the top of the show, but he's a guy that Washington sought after. Ron Rivera, one of his first big free agent signings was Curtis Samuel in that offseason of 2021. After coming here that first year, not really wanting to do anything, kind of wanting to see what this roster looked like, they came in and realized very quickly, outside of Terry McLaurin, there are no weapons on this team at receiver. So they went out and got Curtis Samuel. He came in first year, injury riddled and plagued. Second year, phenomenal. What is he going to do to kind of break the tie? You got 1 year that was essentially a wash. The second year, he was outstanding. What is he going to do in this third and final and deciding year, whether he's going to get to the bag or he's going to force Washington to make a decision on whether to let him walk and get his money elsewhere or keep him here in Washington? I think with this offense and with his capabilities, if he's healthy, I don't see any way he doesn't shine. With Terry on one side and Jahan Dotson on the other, he's going to be the forgotten man a lot of times on the offense. I don't see how he doesn't eat good this upcoming season. And so I think he's in a great position to break out, have a massive season. And he was really good last year. I mean, if he just does what he did last year, I think we'll be pretty happy with the production that he gave us a season ago. If he adds to that, it's even better. And I think he's in line for a new contract here. But again, what says you? Can't pay everybody now. Remember, can't pay everybody. Washington will have a boatload of money next year to spend, but you can't sign everybody. So we'll see what happens. Next guy on the list, Kendall Fuller. A lot of you are trying to run him out of town right now as we speak. They drafted Emmanuel Forbes. You have no idea how he's going to look or how he's going to play. You got Benjamin St. Juste. They went out and put a waiver claim in for Cam Dantzler. You got guys like Danny Johnson and Castro Fields coming back. And so a lot of you are just ready to push Kendall Fuller out the door. I don't understand it, but Kendall Fuller could come back. Not only come back, they could kick him inside. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to leave him outside. If anybody goes inside, it might be Juice again. We'll see. They could move him to safety. They could move him around. They could do some things with him. I don't know what they're going to do, what their plans for Kendall Fuller are. They could cut him. I mean, this discussion could be a moot point because they could cut him, right? Like some of you want them to do, right? I don't see that happening. I see him being a part of this group, and I see him having an impact this year. How big of an impact? He was the best corner we had on this team last year. He had 2 pick sixes last year. The only guy that was really producing any turnovers outside of Derek Forrest in that secondary, and thus Kendall Fuller is a guy only 27 years old that will be potentially in line for one more nice payday. Will it be here in Washington? Will it be somewhere else? That you guys decide. Next guy on the list is someone that's very interesting. I've got a lot of thoughts on him. You'll be hearing those over the next few days or so, but it's Sadiq Charles. I mean, first of all, do you trust him? I don't. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. I don't really trust him, but, it is what it is. Sadiq Charles is in a very interesting spot. I'll just leave it at that because I've got a lot more to say about it, but I don't want to give too much away. I'll save it for another episode. But he could be on this team. He could not be on this team. He could be starting. If he's starting and he plays really well, he could play himself right into a contract next year. And it won't cost you a whole hell of a lot. If he plays really well, he'll be probably in line for one of those Nick Gates type of deals. 3 years, $13-14 million. That's very affordable. And so who knows? Sadiq Charles may play out of his mind this year at left guard and ultimately be the starter there for the next 3-4 years. Who's to say? Or he could play himself right out of the mix and off of the roster, for that matter. Sadiq Charles, what do you say? I've heard people say Sadiq Charles is going to ball out this year. Okay, we'll see. How about Cameron Dantzler Sr.? How about him? Washington put in a waiver claim after he was released by the Minnesota Vikings. I was excited, even though there's been a lot said about Cam Dantzler. I think this is a really good system for his skill set. We're not going to ask him to play a lot of man-to-man, where I think he probably struggles the most. We're going to give him a chance to play zone, eyes on the quarterback, and pick some balls off potentially. And so, again, he may not even make this football team. There's no guarantee. We got a ton of guys in that secondary, specifically at the cornerback position. He's in that mix. I think he's going to make the team, but he's going to have a strong camp. He's not on the team just by the fact that they put in a waiver claim. All right. And this is the last year of his rookie deal. Like I've mentioned, every single player on this list, with the exception of Kendall Fuller and Curtis Samuel, are all on the last year of their rookie deal. So you're looking to get paid. Cam Dantzler is in that conversation. He's going to have a big year to make the team. First of all, he's going to have a big camp just to make the squad, and then he's going to have to take advantage of opportunities once he gets on the field. Casey Toohill. I was reluctant to put him on this list because I think there's a really good chance that he doesn't even make the football team. I'm almost positive he doesn't make the team this year. Again, there are things that could happen, circumstances that could dictate that he's here, and that's why I added him to the list. But if everything goes according to plan, if everything goes the way that it should go, Casey Toohill should be the odd man out of this group, and he should end up being on the practice squad. Somebody else may see what he's done for Washington, like him a lot, and they probably will sign him. I don't know if you can sneak Casey Toohill onto the practice squad or not. They're going to try, most certainly. If he doesn't make the team, they'd love to keep him on the practice squad, and they may be able to get him there. But, defensive end is a position that most teams are always looking to upgrade, and if you don't have enough stuff, they'll come and take Casey Toohill off our hands. Either way, if he's able to somehow make the roster, could he make enough plays this year to warrant being back next year? And again, it won't cost you an arm and a leg to bring Casey Toohill back in that event, but I think he's a long shot, to be honest with you, but had to put him on the list anyway. And then finally, James Smith-Williams. This is a guy that has done everything we've asked of him since he was drafted back in 2020. As a 7th round pick, he's been like a mainstay and a constant, one of the few guys that you can count on week in, week out to be healthy and available at a position where we've had a lot of change and a lot of injury. He's been one of the guys that's been, and it's crazy because he had an injury-marred career at NC State, so I was expecting to get a guy that was rarely healthy, that you weren't going to get a ton out of as a 7th round pick. He's been quite the opposite. It's been quite the contrary to that. He actually has been phenomenal for us in that, reserve defensive end role. And really, he's been a starter for a lot of the time, with Sweat being hurt in 2021 and, Young being hurt in 2021 and then no Young in 2022 for most of the season. He's pretty much been a starter the last 2 years, or at least a year and a half. So he's been really good. He's a really solid backup defensive end. I think he's settled into that role. Will he do enough to remain here is the question. Leave it down in the comment section. So those are the 10 players. There are other guys that are going into the final years of their deal, but they weren't notable enough to be added to this list. Let me know what you think. Who of that group will ball out in 2023 and get the bag here in Washington? That's a really good list of names there that was just on that list. And I'll tell you what, man. You're hoping that Curtis Samuel, you're hoping that Montez Sweat, you're hoping that Chase Young, you're hoping that Kendall Fuller, Antonio Gibson, Cam Curl, James Smith-Williams, you're hoping that these guys have big seasons and make it tough on Washington, because if those guys play well, the likelihood is the team performed well. Again, obviously, everything hinges upon the offensive line productivity and Sam Howell. As far as we'll go is where the quarterback position takes us. We've seen that the last 2 years. Despite having quality defense last year, the offense simply wasn't good enough, and we didn't get enough out of the quarterback position. Hence, you finish with a 500 record. So, again, there's limitations to as far as you can go, but if all of those players play well, or the vast majority of them play really well, the likelihood is this team is going to perform well. So, again, how many of those guys who will be back next year because they balled out in 2023 and they got to the bag here in Washington? Can't wait to read your responses. Leave it down in the comment section. We will discuss this on the live stream tomorrow night. Also, want to give you a heads up. I will be on Tim's program over on his channel sometime this week. I can't say when that video will be uploaded, but I will be joining him. So you guys check that out. I'll be sure to put that out on my socials when I get the word when that video comes out. But nonetheless, you guys keep your eyes peeled for that as well. And so until the next time we meet, you guys have a good one. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. You guys have a great day. See you tomorrow. I told you, content coming at you. New limited series starts tomorrow. Keep your eyes peeled for that as well. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.